Around 6 million years ago, long before the first cave paintings were etched into stone, long before fire became a loyal companion, and unimaginably earlier than cities, roofs, or walls, the night descended on early humans with terrifying certainty. As the sun slipped below the African horizon during the lower Paleolithic period, darkness brought predators, cold winds, insects, and an absolute vulnerability that modern humans can barely comprehend. There were no caves yet known or deliberately occupied, no permanent shelters, no doors to shut out the night, yet humans slept. This question is not poetic curiosity. It is one of the most critical survival mysteries in human history. Where did humans sleep before caves? How did they endure night after night, when every shadow could hide death? To answer this, archaeologists, paleoanthropologists, and evolutionary biologists turn not to myth, but to stone tools, fossilized bones, predator tooth marks, and the silent logic of survival etched into landscapes across Africa and Eurasia. The earliest members of the human lineage, including Homo habilis and later Homo erectus, did not emerge into a world that waited patiently for them to evolve comfort. They entered ecosystems dominated by saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas, crocodiles, and nocturnal hunters whose senses were sharper, faster, and deadlier than anything humans possessed. At night, early humans were not apex predators. They were prey. The absence of caves in early human sleeping behavior is not an assumption. It is supported by archaeology. Caves that later humans occupied were often already claimed by bears, lions, leopards, and hyenas. These animals did not merely pass through caves, they nested, bred, and defended them violently. For an early human to wander into a cave at dusk would have been an act of suicide, so humans slept elsewhere. The earliest sleeping strategy was not architecture. It was location. Open savannas, contrary to instinct, offered visibility. Tall grasses could hide snakes, but they also allowed humans to spot approaching predators from a distance. Fossil evidence from Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania and Ku, Bifora in Kenya, suggests that early humans clustered their activities near scattered trees rather than enclosed spaces. These trees were not homes, but they were lifelines. Nightfall pushed humans upward. Many researchers believe that before ground sleeping became common, early humans slept in trees, much like modern chimpanzees. This behavior did not vanish suddenly. It evolved gradually. Tree sleeping offered protection from large terrestrial predators such as lions and hyenas, which lacked climbing ability or preferred easier prey. Unlike chimpanzees, however, early humans did not build elaborate woven nests at first. Instead, they used natural forks in branches, layered leaves, broken branches, and their own bodies huddled together for warmth and stability. Sleeping was light, fragmented, and defensive. There was no deep rest. Only survival rest. This period shaped the human brain. Sleep deprivation is lethal, yet early humans survived for hundreds of thousands of years under these conditions. This forced evolutionary adaptations. Lighter sleep cycles, rapid awakening, heightened nighttime awareness. Modern humans still retain these traits. The sudden jolt awake from a dream of falling is not random. It is an echo of Trees, leaping ancestors adjusting their bodies to avoid death. As human anatomy changed, tree sleeping became less viable. Longer legs, heavier bodies, and altered hip structures reduced climbing efficiency. By the time Homo erectus emerged around 9 million years ago, humans were spending more time on the ground. But ground sleeping did not mean safety. Instead of caves, early humans chose elevated terrain, rocky outcrops, hillsides, riverbanks where predators approached noisily through water or gravel. These locations created natural alarm systems. A snapping twig, a displaced stone, a splash sound replaced walls. Group sleeping became essential. Archaeological sites show clustered tool remains, suggesting communal resting areas. Sleeping alone meant death. Sleeping together meant shared vigilance. Some individuals likely slept while others remained partially alert. This rotating awareness laid the groundwork for social cooperation that would later define humanity. The night was not silent. Hyenas laughed in the darkness, lions roared to establish territory, leopards dragged kills into trees, crocodiles slid through moonlit rivers. Every sound carried meaning. Early humans learned to interpret the night not as chaos, but as information. Fire had not yet mastered the dark. Evidence for controlled fire use remains debated, but most researchers agree that habitual fire use became common much later, possibly around 400 years ago. Before that, humans could not rely on flames to deter predators or provide warmth. Instead, they relied on positioning, numbers, and the sheer unpredictability of human behavior. Even sleep posture mattered. Sleeping upright against rocks or tree trunks reduced exposure. Curling into tight groups conserved heat. Covering infants with bodies increased survival. These behaviors left no fossils, but they left descendants. Modern human sleep preferences still show a subconscious desire for walls, headboards, and elevated positions. The absence of caves forced creativity. Early humans did not wait for nature to hand them shelter. They adapted their bodies, their social structures, and their minds to an unforgiving planet. Sleeping before caves was not about comfort. It was about enduring another sunrise, and every morning they survived reshaped the species. By learning to sleep without shelter, humans learned to trust one another. By facing the night unprotected, they developed fear, memory, communication, and cooperation. The night was humanity's first teacher. By roughly 8 million years ago, during the early expansion of Homo erectus out of Africa, human nights began to change, not because the world became safer, but because humans became more deliberate. Sleeping was no longer only about finding a place and enduring darkness. It became an activity shaped by memory, planning, and collective knowledge passed from one generation to the next. This shift did not happen suddenly. There was no single invention, no revolutionary night when humans decided to build shelters. Instead, it was a slow accumulation of small decisions made under pressure. Each decision increased the odds of seeing another sunrise. Archaeological evidence from sites in East Africa, such as the shores of ancient Lake Turkana, reveals repeated use of the same locations over long periods. Stone tools, butchered animal bones, and fire. Scarred earth appear in layers that suggest early humans returned again and again to familiar sleeping grounds. These places were chosen carefully. They were not caves. They were open-air camps. The choice of location mattered more than construction. Early humans selected areas with wide visibility, limited access routes, and natural barriers. A rocky ridge reduced the directions from which predators could approach. A river bend forced animals to reveal themselves with sound and movement. Sparse vegetation allowed early detection of danger. Night was anticipated long before sunset. As daylight faded, humans gathered materials. Broken branches, tall grasses, reeds, and leaves were dragged into loose piles. These were not huts in the modern sense, but they served a purpose. They lifted bodies slightly off cold ground, reduced heat loss, and discouraged insects. Even a few centimeters of insulation could mean the difference between hypothermia and survival. Sleeping surfaces became intentional. Evidence from sites dated to nearly 200 years ago suggests humans cleared ground before resting, removing sharp stones and debris. This simple act reveals an important cognitive leap. Humans were no longer reacting to the night. They were preparing for it. This preparation likely began much earlier. Primatologists studying modern great apes observe that chimpanzees select sleeping sites hours before dusk. Early humans almost certainly did the same, but unlike chimpanzees, humans began to reuse locations, returning night after night. Familiarity bred efficiency, Paths were known, sounds were recognized. Threats were remembered, memory became shelter, group size increased sleeping safety. Larger groups meant more eyes, more ears, and more confusion for predators. A lion attacking a solitary figure had clarity. A lion facing a cluster of upright, shouting stone. Throwing humans faced uncertainty. Even without fire, humans were becoming unpredictable. That unpredictability mattered. Predators thrive on routine. Humans disrupted it. As bodies evolved, sleeping posture changed. Long, distance walking altered hip and spine structures, making tree sleeping increasingly impractical. Ground sleeping became the norm, but it remained risky. To compensate, humans clustered tightly, sometimes forming circles with vulnerable members protected at the center. This behavior left no bones, but it left descendants. Modern human infants instinctively calm when pressed against a body. Adults still prefer sleeping with backs against walls. These are not cultural habits. They are evolutionary memories encoded through countless nights of danger. Weather added another layer of challenge. Wind stripped warmth from exposed skin. Rain soaked bedding materials. Cold penetrated bone. Early humans responded by choosing leeward slopes and natural windbreaks. A large rock face could reduce wind exposure dramatically. A fallen tree could act as a barrier. These features were not shelters, but they modified the environment just enough. Gradually, modification turned into construction. The earliest known evidence of purpose built shelters dates to roughly 1 million to 400,000 years ago, though this remains debated. At sites like Terra Amata in present-day France, archaeologists have identified patterns of post holes and arranged stones that suggest temporary windbreak structures. These were not houses, they were sleeping defenses. Walls of branches leaned against rocks, skins draped over frames, weights held coverings in place. These structures were dismantled and rebuilt as groups moved with seasons and food sources. Mobility was survival. Early humans could not afford permanent homes. Staying too long invited predators, depleted resources, and increased disease risk. Sleeping places were temporary by design. The goal was rest without attachment. Fire was still unreliable. While some evidence suggests occasional use of natural fire sources, earlier than once believed, controlled, habitual fire was not yet guaranteed. Without fire, nights remained cold and dark. But humans compensated socially. Vocal communication increased after sunset. Low murmurs, coughs, and movement signaled presence. Silence was dangerous. Sound meant life. Sleeping was fragmented. No one slept deeply for long. Light sleep cycles dominated. Individuals likely woke frequently, scanning darkness, listening. This pattern shaped human sleep architecture. Modern humans still wake briefly multiple times a night without remembering it. This is not a flaw, it is inheritance. Predators adapted too. Hyenas learned human patterns. Big cats tested defenses. Some camps failed. Death occurred. Bones with bite marks confirm it. But enough humans survived for learning to accumulate. Knowledge became protection. Elders remembered which places were safe and which were cursed. Stories formed around sleeping grounds. Warnings were passed on. Children learned where to lie, how to listen, when to freeze, when to shout. These lessons mattered more than tools. As humans spread into new environments across Eurasia, sleeping strategies adapted. In colder regions, bedding materials thickened. In wetter climates, elevation mattered more. In forested areas, clearing ground reduced insect exposure and ambush risk. Every environment reshaped the night. By the time humans began regularly occupying caves, they were already experts at sleeping without them. Caves did not teach humans how to rest. Humans earned caves by surviving long enough to claim them. Caves were not discovered as homes. They were conquered. They became sleeping places only after humans had the strength, numbers, weapons, and eventually fire to drive predators away. Until then, Caves were death traps, the long era before caves forged humanity's relationship with night. Fear became familiarity, darkness became readable, sleep became an act of strategy rather than surrender. Around 400 years ago, something irreversible happened to the human relationship with night. This was not merely a technological shift. It was a biological, psychological, and cultural transformation that changed how humans slept, how they bonded, and how their minds evolved after sunset. The mastery of fire did not just push predators back into the darkness. It reshaped humanity from the inside out. Before fire became reliable, night belonged to animals. After fire, night began to belong to humans. Archaeological evidence from sites such as Wonderwork Cave in South Africa and Jesher Benot Yaakov in the Levant suggests that early humans were using fire repeatedly and deliberately by this time. Ash layers, burned plant remains, and heat-altered stones point to controlled fire rather than accidental wildfires. This distinction matters. Accidental fire is fleeting. Controlled fire changes behavior. For the first time, humans could create a boundary against darkness. Fire transformed sleeping places immediately. Camps that once relied on visibility and sound now gained warmth, light, and deterrence. Predators that had hunted humans for hundreds of thousands of years avoided flame instinctively. Lions circled at a distance. Hyenas hesitated. Leopards abandoned ambush. The night no longer closed in completely. Sleep deepened. This is one of the most overlooked consequences of fire. With reduced predation risk, humans could afford longer periods of uninterrupted rest. Deeper sleep improved memory consolidation, emotional regulation, and learning. These changes did not occur in a single generation. They accumulated slowly, shaping brain structure over thousands of years. Fire lengthened the day. Sunset no longer meant immediate vulnerability. Humans gathered around flames, extending waking hours. This time was not used randomly. It became social time. Stories were told, gestures were repeated, knowledge was shared. Language likely accelerated during these hours. Firelight created faces. Faces created communication. Sleeping near fire also changed where humans slept. Caves, once dominated by predators, became desirable only after fire could be maintained. Flame and smoke drove animals out. Heat made caves habitable. Walls reflected warmth. Ceilings trapped smoke in manageable layers. For the first time, humans could claim enclosed spaces with confidence. But caves were not the first beneficiaries of fire. Open-air camps changed too. Fire pits became central points. Sleeping positions arranged around them reflected social structure. Elders near warmth. Children protected between adults. Fire became both shield and signal. Its glow announced human presence to allies and warned rivals. This visibility carried risk. Fire attracted attention. Other human groups could see it. Competition increased, but cooperation increased as well. Groups that shared fire knowledge survived better. This favored social bonding and trust beyond immediate family. Fire also changed bedding. Animal skins dried and softened near heat. These skins became insulation, wind protection, and insect barriers. Grass mats placed near fire dried quickly, reducing mold and parasites. Sleep became cleaner, warmer, and less painful. The consequences reached anatomy. As humans slept better, energy conservation improved. Children grew stronger. Pregnancy survival increased. Brain development accelerated. These changes favored the emergence of Homo sapiens, whose survival depended less on brute strength and more on cognition, cooperation, and planning. Sleep posture changed again. Humans could now sleep fully reclined without constant vigilance. This allowed muscle recovery and spinal rest. Firelight replaced starlight as the final visual before sleep. The circadian rhythm adapted. Melatonin release shifted. Human biology adjusted to artificial light long before electricity. Fear diminished, but never disappeared. Fire did not make humans invincible. It made them competitive. Some predators adapted. Some dangers remained silent. snakes still slithered, insects still bit. But the balance had shifted. For the first time, humans could choose when to sleep rather than being forced into it by exhaustion. This choice changed culture. Nighttime became sacred in some groups. Fire rituals emerged. Burial practices began to include fire symbolism. Dreams gained meaning when sleep deepened. Storytelling evolved from warnings into myths. Memory expanded beyond immediate survival. The social brain flourished. Fire, centered sleep reinforced pair bonding. Long nights encouraged intimacy. Family units strengthened. Shared warmth became shared identity. Groups that slept together around fire developed stronger emotional bonds than those that did not. Territory began to matter. Camps with reliable fire sources became hubs. Humans returned to them repeatedly. These places gained meaning beyond utility. They became early homelands. Sleeping places became places of belonging. Yet mobility remained essential. Fire did not end nomadic life. It enhanced it. Humans carried embers. They learned to start flames quickly. Knowledge of fire became as valuable as food. Caves entered human life gradually. Once fire was mastered, caves transformed from predator dens into strategic shelters. They offered insulation, storage, and long-term occupation potential. But even then, not all humans preferred caves. Some continued to sleep in open camps, now safer than ever. The decision to sleep in a cave or outside became contextual, not desperate. This marked a psychological shift. Humans were no longer merely surviving the night. They were shaping it. Children born into this world grew up without the constant terror their ancestors endured. This allowed curiosity to replace fear. Exploration increased. Innovation followed. The mastery of fire did not erase the memory of darkness. It layered over it. Humans still feared the dark, still told stories of what lurked beyond the firelight. But now fear could be shared, explained, and ritualized rather than silently endured. Sleep became human. By the time early humans began to occupy caves regularly, the hardest lessons of sleep had already been learned in the open. Caves did not create human rest. They refined it. What truly shaped humanity happened long before stone walls and ceilings enclosed the night. It happened on exposed ground, beneath trees, beside dying embers, and under skies where every sound mattered. The story of where humans slept before caves is not just prehistoric background. It is a blueprint that still governs how humans feel, rest, fear, and dream today. Modern sleep science continues to uncover echoes of this deep past. Humans across cultures prefer sleeping with some form of enclosure, a wall behind the head, a door that closes, a bed pushed into a corner. These preferences are not architectural trends. They are inherited instincts. Millions of years of exposure taught early humans that the most dangerous approach came from behind. A solid surface at the back meant fewer threats. The desire for elevation also persists. Beds are raised. Children fear sleeping on floors. Even in safe environments, humans instinctively prefer to sleep slightly above ground. This preference mirrors the transition from tree sleeping to ground sleeping, where elevation once meant safety. Light remains emotionally powerful. Despite artificial lighting everywhere, many people sleep with night lamps or dim lights. Total darkness triggers discomfort in a significant portion of the population. This is not weakness, it is memory. Darkness once meant invisibility to predators and vulnerability to surprise. Fire changed that relationship, but it never erased it. Noise, too, reveals our origins. Absolute silence makes many people uneasy. White noise machines, fans, distant traffic sounds provide comfort. Early humans slept surrounded by sound. Silence often meant something was wrong. Predators move quietly. Normal nighttime noise meant the world was behaving as expected. Even sleep cycles reflect ancient vigilance. Humans naturally wake briefly multiple times per night. This fragmented sleep pattern frustrates modern expectations, but aligns perfectly with ancestral survival needs. Waking to scan, listen, and assess danger was once essential. The brain still performs this function even when danger is gone. Dreams may also trace back to survival. Many theories suggest dreams evolved as threat simulations. Rehearsals for danger, falling, being chased, freezing in fear. These are not random images. They are ancient scenarios replayed by a brain shaped in hostile nights. Understanding this reframes modern sleep struggles. Insomnia, anxiety at night, fear of darkness, discomfort sleeping alone. These are often treated as disorders detached from history. But seen through an evolutionary lens, they are understandable responses from a species shaped by exposure rather than protection. The shift into caves and later shelters did not remove danger overnight. Even in caves, early humans remained alert. Smoke could suffocate. Predators could still challenge. Rival human groups posed new threats. Sleep was safer but never guaranteed. This constant negotiation with night forged human psychology. Trust became essential. Sleeping required faith that others would protect you, that someone would wake first, that someone would notice danger. This trust built social bonds stronger than tools. Communities formed around shared rest. Sleeping together reinforced identity. Who you slept beside mattered. Who you trusted with your unconscious body mattered. This shaped kinship, cooperation, and moral codes. Eventually, permanent shelters emerged. Huts, tents, houses, cities. But the underlying instincts never disappeared. Modern architecture still reflects them. Bedrooms placed away from entrances, windows positioned carefully, locks, alarms, barriers. These are technological expressions of ancient fear. Even modern cities glow at night. Streetlights replace campfires. They deter crime much like fire deterred predators. Light signals safety. Darkness signals risk. This pattern is universal. The consequences of early sleep strategies reach into culture and belief. Many religions associate darkness with danger and light with protection or truth. This symbolism predates writing. It was lived experience long before it was metaphor. Fire worship, sun gods, night demons, protective spirits. These concepts grew from nights when survival depended on understanding unseen threats. By learning where humans slept before caves, we understand something more important. We understand why humans became human. Sleeping exposed forced cooperation. Cooperation enabled language. Language enabled culture. Culture enabled survival beyond biology. The night did not just threaten humanity, it shaped it. Without those vulnerable nights, humans might never have developed trust, storytelling, planning, or shared identity. Caves did not save humanity. Human adaptability did. The next time you turn off the light, close a door, or pull a blanket close, you are not acting out habit. You are participating in a ritual older than civilization. A ritual born on open ground under stars, surrounded by danger, where survival depended on where and how you slept. This is why the question matters. Where humans slept before caves is not a curiosity. It is the foundation of who we are.